So Vinolia, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Thank you, Nick, for giving me this opportunity and including me in your journey. I'm really humbled and grateful. Happy to be here with you today.
You're welcome, and it's great to have you on the show. But before we walk into the future, Vinolia, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, Nick, I'm actually a Durban girl. I was born in Durban. Went to school in Durban. I studied my first degree in Durban. I lived in Chatsworth. I'm actually from a family of four with my parents and my older brother, so I just have one sibling. And yeah, both my mom and dad worked, and had the privilege of growing up in a very strong community and family that supported each other. Studied, did my first undergraduate in Durban, and then came up and relocated to Johannesburg, which is now home. And I've spent the most part of my years in Johannesburg compared to Durban. That
Right.
makes me really old.
Not really. Can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
As a kid, you want to do many things. You want to be everything. And, I think coming up in a very Indian driven community, there were kind of four careers that people chose to be successful. So you either became a doctor or went into the medical field, you became a lawyer, or you went into the finance field, or you became a teacher. So funny enough for me, I was really caught up. What do I do? Where do I go? My mum was a medical ICU trained nurse. My dad used to make artificial arms and limbs for amputated patients. He had a desire and an ambition that I should be a lawyer because he felt I had the mouth for it, and I often argued things and challenged the status quo. But I was really confused. And I remember one day I was at school, high school, grade 10, 12, which is equivalent to standard 10 back in the days. And it was my English teacher that made us fill out some bursaries. And I never, I'm just, let's just complete it, get it done with. And I ended up doing my first undergraduate to study to become a maths and computer science teacher. And so I fitted into one of those four kind of categories for successful people. And I actually taught just for 2 years when I came up to Johannesburg. And I had a deep passion for digitalization. And back then it was computers. I worked initially in a very old platform of DOS where you have the black and orange screens. And I actually pursued my studies in computer science. I did a second undergrad in computer science. I did my honors in IT, and I also then went on to do my master's. So academically, I've come from a very digital technical background, and my career just landed up with people. And I spent the better part of 22 years of my 25-year journey leading businesses and transforming the people agenda, but I do it through digitalization. So I bring in the passion of tech and how do we disrupt people practices and give organizations their competitive edge through digitalization.
And
And
tell
so
us,
that's been my journey. Started off, I would say, sorry, Nick, by default, just thrown in, and then designed my way to say, how could I use my passion and skills to give me a competitive advantage in the workplace? And so I use a combination of IT and people to get out the best of business strategies.
thank you. And that's a very important lesson for any upcoming leader to look at how you can differentiate yourself, right? In a very crowded market.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Vinolia, can you tell us who inspired you in your early days?
I think in my early days, it's pretty much been two very strong women in my life. One was my gran, who I have the privilege of still having around. She'll be turning 93 years in February 24. So it's really great that we have that level of wisdom in the family. My gran is a very praying, driven, spiritual woman. So she's always taught us, good values, sound principles in life. But she's also said it's great to work hard, but find the balance. And until today, she'll say, you're working hard, and the moment you say, you're having a break or going on holiday, she celebrates that. She's like, great. And then she'll always remind us as well, work hard, but not too hard. Take a break, take a rest. And sometimes we need those reminders, especially in the rapid world of work. The second inspiration was my mum. She taught me great lessons. My mum studied in her 40s and her 50s, plus raising a family, etc. So she taught me the principle of continuous learning, and it never ends. She was pretty brave in the early 2000s to actually work abroad and had the privilege to work in the East. And, I look at her and the aspiration about, the change, how she managed new countries, working abroad, traveled a lot. And so, great wisdom around, don't be fearful, take the chances, take the risks. And so, from an inspiration point of view, those are the two that I draw my inspiration from. I have two daughters myself, and I hope that one day I could be a similar inspiration to them.
Thank you. Now, Vinolia, I believe you started your career at Discovery in learning technology, right?
Yes.
You then moved to MultiChoice as a GM, Imperial, and obviously today you are the Chief People Officer at Adcorp. So looking back over your career, would you say there was a major turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
Yeah, indeed, a number of turning points. I think what you listed, Nick, so far was the corporates that I've worked for, quite strong, global, innovative corporates. But prior to that, as I mentioned, I actually relocated from Durban and came up to Johannesburg, and I taught maths and computer science to high school girls for 2 years. And so a turning point, and at the first turning point was to make a shift into corporate and, to look at how could I have the ability to innovate from a digital perspective? Because that's been my passion. And schools back in the day were not so open to innovation, to digitalization. They were still pretty traditional. So I did then make a transformation into being a corporate trainer for a very short period of time. And then my first turning point on innovation came in when I worked at Standard Bank in CIB, and I transformed training from classroom based to digital. My second turning point was when I was at a crossroad. Do I remain in HR or do I go into IT? And I had the privilege in one of my organizations that I worked at to spend 2 years in IT. And I realized this is just not for me. I think I love the analytical ability that tech brings and software development brings, but it really took away from my character and personality to engage with people, to have a conversation, etc. So I defaulted back or went back into HR, and I thought, okay, this is my place, and this is where I am going to excel and make a difference. I think the next turning point is multiple industries. So you would see that from the corporates that you've mentioned, it's not just one specialization in a particular industry. So I worked across many industries, medical, insurance, entertainment, logistics, and now I am in business solutions, in the people business. So just to name a few, those were the turning points. But for me, at every turning point, there was a learning opportunity, there was a growth opportunity, and it was my ability to seize that opportunity to learn, grow, and I think that's made me the person and the leader I am today.
So Vinolia, what would you say is driving you today?
Yeah, I think today, if I look at it, it's the constant change. It's the unpredictability that the world brings and globalization brings. It's my ability to think differently and on your feet, because some of the problems we face today, there's no handbook for it. How do you deal with it? And it's carving that way and creating. And I think for me, the biggest thing that drives me as well is wanting to make a change in our youth, and particularly in women development.
Thank you. Now, Vinolia, walking into the future, and I know it's a big question, But what does the future of leadership mean to you?
So yes, indeed, indeed, a very big question, because it's like having uh, um, look into the future, global ball kind of thing to say, okay, what can we expect? But just looking around what's happened over the last few years and what's happening globally in the world, I think unpredictable is basically what the future is going to hold. Disruption, and it's going to come in many forms. Political disruption, globalization, tech disruptions, and change. Change is happening very quickly around us. And I think, the future is that we can't be doing it alone. We need people. We need people to work with us to succeed. And together with that, I think, collaboration with people, being, the ability to be agile in your thinking and to have empathy is quite key. So for me, I think that's what the future holds. Really unpredictable, really disruptive, change. And I think if the last 3 years was anything to go by, crisis and more crisis will become, dominant in us as business leaders.
And Vinolia, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders? In other words, what do we have to do more to empower, to elevate, and to activate future leaders?
Yeah, and I think, just reflecting on my own journey and life's lessons, and, I would hate for future leaders, young leaders, to pay the school fees that we've learned. So it's how do you take these learning points and just share them. And for me, the biggest one is resilience, is the ability to be resilient as a leader. Everything won't work out. You'll have obstacles along the way, you will fail, you will have arguments, you will never always win your case or point of view. And so being resilient is very, very key. Being adaptable, because I said change happens and it's going to happen more often. Being adaptable is so critical. Today you'll have one leader, tomorrow you have another. In the workplace today you would have one team to manage, tomorrow you'll have another team. Today you have one strategy, and then curveballs come, you'll have to adapt your strategy. So adaptability is very, very key. We can't be rigid. We can always have a plan, but we need to be fluid in how we address it. I think as a leader, what I've also learned that's become quite critical is emotional intelligence. And it's, having the right level of EQ now as opposed to IQ for leaders. It's going to be very, very strong requirement to be successful in leadership going forward. Um, I think for me, the next one was purpose. Having a purpose, being purpose driven, looking just beyond profit as a business leader will become key. And this is quite demanding from even people that we lead, employees and talent that we attract, even customers. Personally, for me, I mean, I'm an avid learner. It doesn't always have to be formal learning, but continuous learning is critical. Staying up to date with new trends, what's happening out there becomes very key. So don't ever think you've done your last degree, close the book, and that's it. You've got to continuously learn to be relevant. And there's two more for me. I think, tech integration, and I'm quite passionate, but no matter what field you are in, no matter what you do, the digital trends are out there, disruptions out there. Don't be fearful of the tech. Learn to embrace it. And lastly, we cannot, succeed on our own as leaders. So collaborative leadership becomes very key right from the top, from your CEO, exco teams, etc. Being able to collaborate effectively is very, very important for success.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question, Nick.
It does. It certainly does. Now, Vinolia, as you said, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. So what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
Yeah, so Nick, that's quite a big one, and it's new challenges every day. But as I reflect on your question, there's a couple that come to mind, 4 or 5 challenges that I'd like to list. Globalization is definitely one. We're seeing that the world and businesses are becoming increasingly interconnected. For me, I think also a kind of term boundaryless. So the workplace is becoming boundaryless. You're employing people that don't live in your city. You have remote workers. You have people that live in different parts or different geographies. So, globalization is quite a critical component. The next one is managing diverse teams. So with globalization comes this diversity. You're now attracting talent from different walks of life, etc. You've got geographically dispersed teams, and so it is a challenge that we will need to learn to overcome. And it then requires a different set of leadership skills to the old school way of leading, etc. And so we need to adapt our leadership style. The next one for me is, the rapid tech changes. It's changing fast. It's disrupting businesses, business processes. If you think you're going to be immune to this disruption, you're not. Whatever industry you are in, it's just a matter of time. So, like I mentioned earlier, embrace the tech, understand it, know how it will interfere with your work or your line of business. Embrace it and say, how can I use it to augment my current processes? It's not going to replace. Don't be fearful. How do I augment? And that the sooner you learn to embrace and augment tech into your processes, you'll increase your competitive advantage. I think with the tech, a big challenge for future leaders is cybersecurity. And that's a big a big threat in the business world, especially if you move your business to more digital business. But it creates an opportunity for us to say, okay, here's another exciting avenue to overcome, investigate, and how do we actually build a security gate for cyber attacks, etc. I think as a people person, and what I'm seeing surfacing, a big challenge in the future is definitely going to be mental wellness of people and our workforce. In fact, the World Health Organization, stated that by 2030, the biggest pandemic or crisis the planet will face is mental wellness. And if you look at it, it's just 6 years away, where people will really be challenged with dealing with various types of mental wellness issues. And I think lastly, what's surfacing a lot in our younger generation is just the whole environment and social aspects of sustainability and businesses being responsible in the ESG space. There's a big demand from customers. Even when attracting talent currently, they want to know, what is your ESG strategy? What is your commitment to the environment? How are you actually running your business to support environmental and social sustainability? So those are the top, few challenges that come to mind that I'd like to share in this recording.
Now, Vinolia, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some, maybe just 1 or 2 skills, new skills, you would like to factor in and maybe even teach?
So, if you bring the even teach in, and having been through this as well, I think from a business perspective, and because I'm so passionate about it, it's the digital literacy component. I think every leader needs to be digitally literate. Be aware of the emerging technologies in your industries, in your business. Be aware of the digital trends and disruptions, but also have a flair for data and analytics and make business decisions, sound decisions that are data driven, because then you are more likely to meet the needs of your customers. On the softer skill side, and I've alluded to this, I think resilience, or the ability to be resilient, is a key characteristic or competency leaders need. Adaptability, being agile, so the ability to change quickly will become critical. Emotional intelligence is also something that I think that we need to and if we're going to be needing people and leading teams, having the EQ will become quite critical. And critical thinking and problem solving in a world where sometimes there's no handbooks for crisis becomes exceptionally important.
Thank you. Now, Vinolia, as a mentor to so many future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader, formally or informally, and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, so the latest or the most recent, mentorship that I've been doing is with a young business leader, a female, that's really passionate about um, catering, healthy living, and providing, businesses with solutions around wellness from a nutrition point of view. So I was really attracted to her passion for the field and just an openness to learn and to grow. Now, I've never run my own business myself, but she's reached out and she said, I just I really appreciate your directiveness, and I look at your leadership and how successful you've been. Please, can you mentor me? And I took it upon myself in the last year, and we will continue this year. But she's made some great strides, moving her business from running a small canteen on site at a corporate office to opening up a coffee shop, to creating small businesses and opportunities for work, employing people, just helping, guiding her with thinking differently, innovatively, to grow a business, to not be afraid to speak up, to challenge the status quo, to believe in herself. And it's been really remarkable. And she closed off the year opening up her own venue that people could hire out for events where she would have her own event, and that's been her heart's desire. And so I was really grateful that I could be part of it. But I think, when you are leading and guiding and mentoring individuals, there must be a hunger and a thirst for learning on the other side. But equally so, I've also learned from her a hell of a lot, in the process, and just being humble, coming back from small beginnings, being humble, being grateful for every opportunity you get, taking it seriously. And she's just, I have such a great passion for delivering with excellence. So never do anything taking shortcuts, just give off your best and drive excellence. And she's actually shown me that in everyday life. Just the things that she does, it's always about excellence, the best ingredients, the best display when you're catering for an event, etc. And it reminded me, profoundly around my root value of excellence. And so that's one example that I'd like to share with you, Nick.
Thank you, and well done. Now, Vinolia, looking back over your own career, are there any role models of leadership that you've encountered and maybe worked with that you feel future leaders could learn from?
I think in the history books, there's a lot that we read and learn. So historically, I think, I draw a lot of inspiration from our very own Nelson Mandela, and I draw inspirational from my own cultural leader, Mahatma Gandhi. And I look back and I actually think, what is it that made them such profound leaders? And there's a few things that stood out for me. Is one, they brought about peaceful change. So whatever they wanted to do or the change wasn't violent, it was peaceful. They brought about the change around moral leadership. Whatever they did was ethical and morally sound. They brought about, forgiveness. People will hurt you along the way as leaders, but they forgave. And the last thing is, again, resilience stood out for me. And I look around the world today and I think of what's going on. And these leadership, trends or lessons or characteristics that they brought about is so profound. And we need more of that in today's world. We need the peaceful change. We need moral and ethical leadership. We need forgiveness. And definitely we need resilience. In my workplace, you've stated a lot of the companies and the brands that I worked for. I've had the privilege to sit under the leadership of very profound South African CEOs, at different leadership conferences, at strategy sessions, etc. And for me, a lot of innovation, some of the brands that I work on are built on innovation, built on change. And I had that privilege of working with those leaders that drove, constant innovation, think differently, disrupt yourself, disrupt from within, etc.
So, Vinolia, I believe there's one more role model of leadership that you would like to honor and mention.
Yes, yes, Nick, thank you for that. And it's actually a current leader and one that I particularly admire because it's female. And that's Mary Barra, who is the CEO of General Motors. And she's been the CEO of General Motors for the past 10 years. And what's really incredible is that she's the first female leader for a global automaker. And when I look at Mary and I reflect on her journey and her leadership, she's been highly recognized for transforming the company, bringing about innovation, driving sustainability in that group, and particularly around electric cars. And I think what really is incredible is that she brought this turnaround in a very male-dominated industry. So definitely, there's a lot of lessons that we can take out from her. And, I reiterate the lessons around resilience and adaptability and change. And I think her entire legacy as a leader is based on her ability and her the lessons that she brought around in terms of crisis management, and lots of lessons for the future of leaders that we can extract out of this. And that is, take risks, don't be afraid, do not fear. Break the status quo, go into industries or sectors that you are unfamiliar with, get out of your comfort zone. But what she did incredibly well is that she built strong teams and strong people around her, and she took people along with her. So when I reflect, when I think about the future of leadership, this is one great leader that I think we can reflect on, because in the current day, she really brings about a new sense of inspiration and motivation. So yeah, Nick, that's just the current leader I'd like to recognize in our chat today.
Now, Vinolia, how can our listeners connect with you and where should they follow you?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much active on LinkedIn, so they are more than welcome to reach out to my LinkedIn profile. And I think what's quite important is networking, and hopefully post-COVID, there's a lot of networking sessions that happen, and so I try to make myself available to also learn from different people to share insights. So predominantly on LinkedIn.
Right. And last but not least, Vinolia, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are looking to finish school, to enter the world of work, to start a career? What are maybe one or two success principles they should keep in mind?
Yeah, so I think, for me, the takeaways that I would like any of the listeners to listen to, and especially our young or next generation of leaders, is be humble. You cannot succeed alone. We don't know everything. We need people around us. I think two is be resilient. You will hit many barriers. Your journeys won't be easy as leadership. But for me, I've always lived my career, my life on there will be failures. And when you fail and when you fall, it's not about how you fall, but it's about how you choose to get up. And that choice to get up lies within each one of us.
Right.
And so lastly, I would also like our leaders to also remember, kindness. Be kind. We need so much of kindness in the world today, but be kind to yourself as well. I often say tomorrow organizations will replace you, but your family never will. So be kind to yourself, be kind to your family, be kind to your teams, take care of your health. It becomes very, very key in a world that is so unpredictable, that is ever changing. And I think one component as well is that, just keep going. no matter how the day goes, how life goes, how the year goes, how the challenges are, keep going, one foot in front of the other, and you ultimately reach your destination.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinolia, for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and for guiding and inspiring so many future leaders.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for the opportunity. And I really do, believe that hope that the listeners are of this podcast or recording is able to take some lessons. And yeah, I'm happy to connect outside of this forum with others that are keen as well, like-minded people.
Thank you.